Good evening. Welcome to this Experience Longy event entitled Beginner's Mind, How to Approach New Music. I'm Allison Cooley, the Chief Development Officer here at Longy School of Music. And on behalf of our fantastic event participants, we are so happy that you're here with us tonight. In this season, when our thoughts may linger on gratitude just a little bit more, I want to start tonight with a thank you to our donors. Because of you, our students are becoming the musicians the world needs them to be. And the world is calling on them to be artists who disrupt norms and tropes and engage audiences in new ways. To be music educators who live out a culturally responsive pedagogy, centering their students and honoring all cultural identities in their classrooms. And the world needs more artists who broaden how they use their music by creating healing environments for medically compromised or vulnerable people through therapeutic music. That's the impact our students are preparing to have in the world. So thank you for supporting their time of transformation at Longy. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our event co-sponsors, Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, Cambridge Center for Adult Education, the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center, Carey Memorial Library, and Dunamis. So a little framing for tonight's event. At an Experience Longy event we had last year, we heard from one of our faculty members, David Small, who brought his passion for meditation practice to Longy by creating a new class, the Mindful Performer. Tonight, we find ourselves joined by another faculty member who is also a longtime meditation practitioner. John Morrison has derived from his practice a wonderfully interactive way of audiences to engage with new music, and you'll get a little taste of that later on in the event. I thought it was important, however, to start tonight, given our topic, with a grounding meditation. So feel free to turn off your cameras if you so choose during the meditation, but we do look forward to seeing your lovely faces after. Following the meditation, John will briefly frame the concept of beginner's mind to support all of our collective learning together. John, thank you, welcome, and so grateful that you're about to lead us in this meditation.
Thank you, Allison. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you all for coming. As Allison said, this is extremely meaningful stuff to me, and I'm really, really happy to be able to do what I'm doing. So I'm going to lead you in a little meditation. And since the event is focused on beginner's mind, which is, of course, closely associated with Zen meditation, it's especially suitable to use a fundamental Zen practice, breath counting, for our meditation. It's a practice I use every day in my oral theory classes, a practice utterly simple and yet quite challenging. So here's how it will go. Sit or stand in good posture with your hands in your lap or on your legs. Look straight ahead if you wish, or slightly down, which is the custom, with eyes half open, which is the custom. Closed is fine, wide open is fine, whatever's comfortable for you. In these kinds of settings, I typically close my eyes. So you will see me close my eyes, I'm sure. When we start, count when you breathe out and do nothing on the in-breath. If a thought lodges in your mind, simply start over. And if you should make it to 10, start over. I'll set a timer for 2 minutes, actually 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And when it goes off, we're done. Any questions? All right, let's do it. Here comes 2 minutes and 6 seconds of breath counting. And there we are. 2 minutes can seem like a long time sometimes. Excuse me. So, I want to introduce the concept of beginner's mind a little. And of course, first thing, beginner's mind comes from Zen Buddhist practice and refers generally to that state of mind when one has just begun a pursuit, when one has little knowledge of that pursuit yet, and the mind is filled with the desire to learn. And the key to this state of mind, which was stated already, in which one embraces not knowing, is that conscious knowledge is deeply tied to concepts. Concepts of the right way to do something, concepts of the way to think of a task, concepts of what happens if you do it wrong, and all that kind of stuff. So many of these concepts, of course, make us hesitant to simply do a thing and learn. So bypassing that stage and inhabiting the natural state of not knowing, a skill that can be learned through practice, can be of immense value. So the initial difficulty of beginner's mind is in realizing its value, that not knowing is the predicate to learning. As we become more and more expert at what we do, it becomes more difficult to sustain that state of mind. We have a lot of resistance to letting go of our hard-earned experience, our recognized expertise. And it can be very hard for us to hear from someone else about their way, their different take on things, their view of rightness. So, for those of us who aim to become expert listeners, as I'm sure many of us do, encountering music we have not heard is really one of the best ways to embody not knowing, since we really ought to be able to admit to ourselves ahead of the encounter that we don't know what we will hear. We might know the ensemble, we might know the style, we might be told something in program notes, but in fact, we're in a state of not knowing when we encounter a piece of music we have not heard. So, of course, I have a lot more to say about beginner's mind, but I'm going to stop here for now. If you want to read about my thoughts in more depth, check out my blog post on the subject. We'll send you a link in chat in a bit to allow you to check it out later. So for composers, on the other hand, setting aside expertise and listening to other composers' music can be very difficult. When composing, whether beginning a piece or when we're deep inside of composing one, inhabiting beginner's mind can be of great value. So let's hear some thoughts on doing that from my colleagues, Matthew and Alexandra. And I'll be back in a little bit to take you through an experience designed to give you a glimpse of beginner's mind through listening to new music.
John, thank you so much. What a wonderful way to start this evening. Appreciate it. Yep, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a little bit. I'd now like to welcome Longy faculty member Matthew Evan Taylor. Welcome, Matthew. And Alexandra Dubois, who is chair of Longy's Composition and Theory Department. Welcome, Alexandra.
Hi.
You
Thank
too.
you, Allison.
I have been so looking forward to having this conversation with you too. My goodness, I am just so curious about how beginner's mind manifests itself in your creative process. So let's just roll up our sleeves and get into it. Can you share what the beginning of your creative process is like in terms of mind, body, spirit connection or disconnection? And Matthew, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I think each piece I attempt to create has kind of a separate, a unique beginning. But I think where they all connect is that I do like to revise before I start. Just to kind of clear the cobwebs from the last piece that I wrote and to see what the air is going to tell me. I have this expression for listening. Basically, I'm listening for how the room vibrates, how the air resonates, because that for me, that is the kind of tactile experience I need to get myself excited about writing music, and for me to feel the kind of suppleness of the sound, and get into finding other possibilities for what I want to create.
Well, right off the bat, of course, I have another question because you've got me curious. So you talk about a frequency. Can I ask you, where do you experience that in your body? Are you aware of sort of how you're sort of taking that in?
It's typically around my diaphragm, something like that. I'm a wind player, so I tend to experience things around the lungs and the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And that's when I feel most resonant, is when I have that feeling of, oh, okay, yeah, we've gotten somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. Alexandra, same question to you, mind, body, spirit connection.
Absolutely. I resonate with everything that you're saying, Matthew. And I feel so much the physical part of composing is, as opposed to being a player, a musician, which Matthew is, which I am occasionally, is so different, I find, as the person of me that sits down and sits down literally and composes, or writes down, I should say, the physical act of writing down, entering into notation software, etc. And for me, it's always zero. It's always at zero. I always feel like I'm starting at zero, and that connects always to the beginner's mind, even before I knew and started studying some Zen Buddhism. And zero is a very physical thing because you're almost like an infant and you don't know anything, but it's like this silence that envelops you. And for me, it's always refinding that silence. What is that silence right now as it was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 hours ago? It's always different. So that kind of physical nature is very, very empty. And that's why I write, because it allows me to go to that space of not knowing, of just being. So it's physical and it's not physical at the same time.
Mm, now we're getting into metaphysics. It's only a few minutes in. Okay, so we're off to a good start. I'm curious because I think for a lot of us who maybe composition is something that we don't do on a regular basis like you do, or have never had the chance to do. I'm wondering what those early moments are like in your creative process. And I'm wondering if you can maybe harken back to maybe one of your most recent compositions. And Matthew, I do recognize as an improviser, you're sort of experiencing a particular type of journey around improvisational music. And then as Alexandra, you were sort of hinting at, and Matthew, as you do as well, sort of notating music. So Matthew, I'd love for you to bring that into the conversation too. So what are those early moments? Can you give almost like a specific example of something that you experienced recently?
Yeah, sure. So I've been engaged in this series called Postcards to the Met, with musicians from the Rajas Ensemble, Rajneesh Swaminathan, and Metropolis Ensemble, and all under the auspices of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the way the postcards work is I improvise. I improvise, record myself, send a video, and I send it to the musician that I'm hoping to communicate with for that particular postcard. So for me, the early moments it's literally I've recorded the first part of my creative process, and then I kind of try to forget that performance, and then I write a score for the musicians to send back to me their performance of it. And so in that way, I keep recreating, breaking apart the piece so that it sounds new to me. So at each step, there are new possibilities presented, and engage with the material, and helps me hear the material in new ways, and find new
Mm. And Alexandra, I think you were already speaking to this a little bit, but I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper. So is there a particular recent composition, and maybe you can just share a little bit about what those early moments were like for you?
Absolutely, Allison. When I sit down to write a piece, in my earliest days of writing, I kind of was faced, and I think all of my students and who are also my colleagues, I don't like the word student, but I of course use it too. Is uh, what am I doing here? What is the point of this? And there's a lot of fear that goes into writing, and I think a lot of people that don't think of themselves as a composer, or even can't fathom what it is to be a composer, thinks that it comes from this divine place where all these ideas arrive for you, like we've been trained to think of as Mozart was this genius. And I think that can exist in some capacity, but it's not really what I think of in terms of composition. And for me, I in the earliest parts of a piece, I it's not meditation, but it's a form of meditation in the sense that I sit on what do I want to hear, and who is listening, and therefore what does it sound like. And I try to go back to a place of goodness and kindness and vibration, like you were saying, Matthew. And it really is a vibration, and it's a vibration of love and of listening, because why am I writing music? There are so many people on the planet that need help and support, and I think that my soul went into music because I needed to heal. And becoming a composer, as opposed to interpreting music, allowed me to sit with that and feel that vibration and hopefully share it with others.
Mm, beautiful. Matthew, I would love to ask you, how has your creative process changed as you have changed as a human?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm still kind of reeling from what Alexandra was saying, but yeah. So I would say um, when you start off when you start off trying to be creative, um, there's something about the way we're taught, where there's this implication that there are all these rules, right? And so you're constantly kind of referring back to these rules, and sometimes sometimes they're so embedded in you, you don't consciously think of them, and you're able to create just fine. But then there are other times where, like, you try to take on systems, um, just off the top of my head. You try to write in a fantastic way, like Zanaka or something, and you're like, for me, those types of ways of composing just never worked for me, right? And you start having this experience of just kind of ramming your head up against the wall. But as I gained more experience, I started to understand that, these aren't rules, these are suggestions. And what worked for one composer doesn't necessarily work for me. Um, but I can still take advice from those composers. I can still look to those composers for inspiration, and actually actually maybe it's a misinterpretation of what they're doing, but it's fine, because my misinterpretation of a particular composer's piece can lead to a great piece for me that is completely unique. Um, so yeah, so for me, I think my process has become a lot more open, and a lot more secure, because I realized how much knowledge I already contain.
Mhm.
And going back to um, some of what Alexandra is talking about that personal connection to the music, the resonance, the sense of healing, excuse me. it all comes back to that, and it takes a little while to. It took a little while for me to actually understand that that's why I was doing the music, why I was creating.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful point to just pause on. This is about your artistic why. And I think at Longy, in so many ways, we're disrupting what a lot of academic systems have done to our students when they arrive at Longy, which is they're literally asked for the first time, what is your artistic why? And we are here to support whatever journey you're on, as opposed to being dictated to. And I think, what's so wonderful about what you're both saying is you're able to offer this sense of openness to your students. So I'd love to now shift, acknowledging that you were both faculty members at Longy. And when you are working with your composition colleagues, Alexandra, how does beginner's mind show up for them in their creative process, even as they're in these formative years of building and developing from one learning experience to the next? What is that juxtaposition for them like, Alexandra?
Absolutely, Allison, and it goes to so much of what you were just saying, Matthew and John Morrison, everything that you've shared with us at the start of our event today and all that you do and share in your classes and with your students is that we're here as faculty members, as studio teachers, as professors of the classes that we teach to help students at Longy listen to themselves first, because, and I'll just speak to the composers. I'm sure we have performers on the call and non-musicians, although everyone's a musician in my eye. If you can't listen to yourself, then you can't listen to others. And so if you're inclined to want to create and share, my job is to help you find the smallest voice within yourself that is probably the strongest voice, but the most embedded and the most hidden in your being. And you've perhaps tried to keep that hidden to let that voice survive. And I want to always create a safe space to allow those that I have the honor to work with to be able to honor that voice and nurture that voice and allow that voice to come out. And no one can teach you how to be a composer, but we can provide feedback to help you see that. That's what matters to me in education. Just like in life, art and life are our best friends.
Thank you, Alexandra. That's so beautifully, I think, encompasses what's at the heart and soul of Longy. And Matthew, same question to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. You can't really teach composition. All you can do is guide. And so for me, what I find with students I've had or colleagues I've had in the past, I'll honor our lecture. I find that they're a lot like I was, where I'm kind of constantly trying to throw up things that take me out of beginner's mind, right? They're trying to be too sophisticated, quote unquote, and trying to emulate somebody, or and so what I like to do is I like to give them some exercises of just, all right, what happens if you're just using 3 notes? And these are just like little exercises. Just write out 3 patterns using 3 notes, and what happens. How can you turn that into a composition? What are the barriers? What are the barriers to structure, to your sense of structure? How does your sense of pacing change, and do your rests sound different? All these things. I try to get them to kind of expand the composition space, in a way where it's not just about the notes on the page, right? And it's even more than just making the sound in the room. It's about understanding the totality of the things that the implications of what you're putting on the page, because there is no such thing as an exact performance of your piece. Even MIDI, right? Our friend MIDI performs our pieces. It's quantized perfectly. The pitches come out at exactly the right frequency, but the timbres are wrong. The actual feeling of human performance is never going to be duplicated. And so trying to point that out to students, be like, hey, look, you're actually in a really great adventure. So let's play with it. Let's see what happens.
That's fantastic. As we're about to pivot towards the wonderful exercise that John has for us, I just have one last question for the two of you. We have a lot of people who are watching tonight who are likely audience members, right? As you say, Alexander, we're all musicians. Well, we're all audience members too. So in your opinion, what is the advantage when audience members start from this open place of beginner's mind? And what have you noticed in your own engagement of new music that's not of your own creation that has benefited you?
You want to go first, Alexander?
I could, but you could as well.
I'll go first. So I think, well, they're the obvious benefits, where if you're coming to a new piece with beginner's mind, the assumption is you're leaving the preconceptions of what you think music is at the door, and you're coming to it, and you're allowing the piece to unfold on its terms, as opposed to in comparison to, right? But I also think that even beyond new music, if you're going to any music with beginner's mind, it takes away that sense that you already know what's going to happen, right? And what you can achieve is, oh, actually, I never noticed that moment in Beethoven or whatever, and then you get to question, oh, was that because the conductor emphasized that, or the horn players are particularly strong, or is this something that I've just missed, right? And you can approach new music with the same amount of enthusiasm. It's also incredible how much of a piece you'll remember if you're coming to it in this kind of state of curiosity, as opposed to kind of a state of, all right, impress me,
Yeah, the open. Yeah.
Yeah, the knowing of it, the coming to it with something else, and that is what I think has destroyed us as audience members, is needing to come to the concert hall, to the club, to the space with knowing. And fear is something that can be eradicated with the beginner's mind, through meditation, through mindfulness, through just simply being. And if we can approach music with not knowing, then we don't have a fear of how many people have said to me, "Oh, I can't understand Beethoven the way you do because you're a composer." And as a composer, we don't know anything else other than ourselves. And to compose really is to not know, because you don't know what you're going to write until you write it. And so not knowing and just being and just sitting can allow you to experience music without the fear. And it relates to being fearful of immigrants from other countries. We're all immigrants from other countries except for the Native Americans, that have died and been killed by European settlers. And so we're so fearful, and not knowing can remove the fear and allow us to simply experience the sounds that our souls crave and that we all need, and we're all connected by vibrations, because we can't close our ears, we can only close our eyes.
Yeah, and I know we're running short, but it also reminds me that this is something that I deal with when I'm teaching improvisation quite a bit. Is the shifting the gear from, oh, I can't play that because that doesn't sound good, to I can play anything, right? Um, uh, and it's always a subtle thing where, um, what I tend to do is I kind of limit the field of choices, and then allow them to kind of, and if they go outside that field of choice, it's fine. What's your next choice then? Like, how does that affect what you're doing? And I think that that tends to be how I listen to music too, where perhaps I am listening to kind of just one second. I'm paying special attention to one type of sound in a piece, but then something else will go off and like, oh, that was connected something. What is that? Is that going to happen again? And then I listen for it, and in that way, my field of hearing grows and grows, and almost like a flashlight whose aperture is being widened.
Interesting. Well, Matthew and Alexandra, so grateful for the time that you spent with us tonight. Thank you so very much. And I'm so excited now to bring John Morrison back as promised. John, for many years now, you've been teaching a class at Longy that creates space for students to personally investigate their experience with music. And you've offered to share a shortened version of a particular exercise, given the time we have remaining. Just one Zoom housekeeping note for those watching: as John encourages your responses during the exercise, feel free to drop those in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function by clicking on the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. John will invite you to unmute and share your thoughts with the group. John, take it away, sir.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, Alexandra and Matthew, for your insightful comments. Indeed, I'm going to share my screen now. This is a workshop that I do. I travel around and do this in order to, well, it's in order to promote new music, but it's also to give people a glimpse of beginner's mind. I have done it at churches, schools, all kinds of places, and I've developed a class at Longy based on it called Just Listen. And we do this repeatedly over a semester. And so you'll see. Just one thing to establish before going further, and that is, no matter what we've all said, we know that there is a conception out there of new music as difficult, as hard to understand, and something that requires a lot of education to understand, right? I mean, that's the going concept. So that's our starting place. We're going to listen to a piece a couple of times. In a normal workshop, I might listen to it 3 or 4 times with people. We're going to listen to it twice. The piece is called King of the Sun, and we're going to only hear the first movement. It's like a little over 2 minutes, just long enough you can actually remember. The composer, Stephen Hartke, it's a piano quartet. The quartet, or the ensemble, is the Los Angeles Piano Quartet. So, for now, just listen. All right. Well, what do you hear? Specifically, what sounds do you remember? What energies did you hear? Maybe a word about shape, but what did you hear? What do you remember? You may enter something in chat, you may raise your hand, or you can just unmute and speak. What did you hear? I hope you heard something. I hope that the sound was coming through. What did you hear? What do you remember? Just one sound that you remember. What did you hear? Space between. Excellent. Here we go. Let me turn a little here and space between. What else? What'd you hear? Oh, here we go. Yeah. Downward energy, arrows. All right. Downward energy, arrows. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Gentle, resonant sounds, creating expectations. I'll put resonant sounds. Yeah, all right. Start, stop, start. Yeah. That we certainly heard that. Start, stop, start. Yeah. All right. Yeah. What else? What else? Anybody willing to speak? It doesn't matter to me, but speaking is also allowed. All right. Start, stop, start. Yeah. What else did you hear? Evolving. All right. Evolving. Yeah. Evolving. Yeah. Evolving. There we go. What else? Evolving. Yeah. All right. I thought I saw a hand go up that was Allison. Anybody hear anything? The provocative? What did you hear? What kind of energy did you hear? What kind of sounds did you
There's more chat, John.
Oh, I don't see it. Oh, there's one. Yeah, repetition. Well, there it comes. Yeah, repetition. Yeah. Repetition. Yeah. What's that next one? Changes. A journey unfolding. Journey unfolding. Yeah. All right. Yep. I like to represent some of these things by drawing, and let me see. A journey unfolding, a repetition, start, stop, start, the space between. Actually, every one of these, oh, there's a hand up. Let me get my hand up first. Matthew, what do you got there?
Yeah, very, very tightly bound. Almost, if I were to put a color to it, like a deep red or brown or some sort of earth tone.
All right, tightly bound. Yeah, let me. So I'm glad you said color because that will allow me to choose the color to draw with. All right, so tightly bound, repetition, start, stop, start, and space between. I think I can draw that. Let me see. And I need an earth tone. I already had a brown here. Let me see. That's pretty good. How about that? So something that does something, has some space between, repeats, has some space between, sort of repeats a little bit, has some space between. And yeah, it looks like a journey, right? It looks a little bit like a journey. And it's got space between and it's repeating. So we've got a number of those comments already in here. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I want to keep an eye on the time. Looks like I've got a couple more responses here. Let me get those and see what happens, and then we'll listen again. Changes, a journey unfolding, and there are questions and answers. Yes, 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 yes. All right, yes, yes, yes. Keep bound. Questions, answers. Yeah. Questions, answers, and looks like one thing I was thinking, hopping. Yes, indeed. It has that hopping energy. Boop, 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 boop. Ba-doop, bop, bop, bop. Definitely hopping. And definitely questions and answers. I think I can draw that too. So we've got a journey going and we got some repetition and space between. And then there does seem to be a response in there. And, I'm going to use blue. The piano starts to come in. I'm not going to draw any more than that, but that's an answer. That's an answer. There's questions and there's an answer. I'm not going to take that any further right now. Let's listen again in the interest of time. And keep in mind, of course, what you've heard other people say, what we have drawn, and see what happens when you hear it again. And listen. All right. Well, once again, what do you hear? What do you hear? Sounds, energy, and now relationships, shape. What do you hear? Allison's got her hand up. Allison.
I think what I noticed more this time was the reverberations. And what I didn't notice the first time is I felt there was more space in between, but I was more aware of the reverberations in between that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll comment on that later. But that's nice. Yeah, reverberation. Yeah. What else? What'd you hear? I see somebody coming in here. The interaction of two animals. Aha, play fighting. I'm going to write down play fighting. Yeah. And stairs in a subway station or walking through a labyrinth. I'm going to just put one of those down. Stairs up in a subway station. And if I'm the way I hear that comment is related to the one that said descending arrows, because there is a downward tendency. Dut 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 dut. Yeah, it's kind of like walking downstairs, isn't it? And you reach the platform. Dut dut dut. Yeah. All right. All right. Hiding and seeking. Yes, indeed. That's yes. You can certainly imagine people playing hide and seek back and forth. Yeah, definitely. Hide and seek. Interrupted by the long bowed. Aha, yes. The searing violin sound. All right. I've been needing villain, the violin sound. I've been needing to draw something, and there's something I need to draw. That is definitely to be drawn, a searing violin sound. And I need a red searing violin sound. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Siri is thinking that I'm asking for a violin sound. Did you hear that? Siri answered with a violin sound. No, Siri. God. All right. I don't even use Siri. I must have said something that sounded like Siri. All right. Searing, that's what it was. Searing violin sound. All right. Here we go. Ah, yes, indeed. Searing violin sound. You got me going. Let me see what else I've got here. Human life. Well, yeah, okay, all right. That would take. I can get that. Yeah. There's definitely like human life in there. Human life. What else do we have? Persistence. Absolutely, persistence. That. None of the players ever give up, do they? Ba 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 da ba ba. And that piano doesn't give up either. LOL. Oh, yeah, laugh out loud. Siri. I'll say it softly. All right. Boy. 52. You know what? I said we're planning to sort of be done around this time, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up. You can sort of see that we've got something of an analysis going here, and out a couple of quick comments, and then I'll close. We used this piece in my class, Contemplating Music, one year, and we stayed with this 2-minute first movement for about 6 weeks with no score. We would listen, we would have listening assignments, and we would come back and report on what we found. And one of them was on the reverberation, just the space. So that was my comment about that. So a couple of other things. You deal with this long, you find out things. You listen. One of the things that comes out is that this little shape right here, you can still see my screen, I think. This little shape right here, I'm going to circle it in green. That repeated figure. It's the same shape as the whole piece. The whole piece has an apex, which is that searing violin sound, and the apex of each one of those little shapes. So it's a little fractal, basically, and a lot of music does this. Like the micro is the same shape as the macro. That's kind of an interesting thing. And you discover that when you live with it long enough. I think that'll. Oh yeah. There's one other thing for the detail musically inclined. The figure itself, the ba 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 da ba ba ba. It's nothing but a series of upbeats followed by a series of downbeats. Up, down, 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 down. So it's so amazing. This just such a simple thing that creates this incredible outcome. So those are some things that you realize long term. Let me just provide a couple of comments here. Beginner's mind, not knowing. If we can allow ourselves not to know, just allow ourselves not to know in whatever circumstance we exist in, but especially music. If we can then engage with music with beginner's mind, we will learn. We will learn. It's that simple. Very simple. This is not something everybody realizes, but we all realize it at some point. What we think we know, what we think we know, what we are afraid to let others know that we don't know, very definitely stands in the way of what we can know. That's something you realize over the years. And here's my last little statement. So, have compassion for yourself if you don't know. Where else can you be? Have compassion for yourself if you don't know. Have compassion for others if you consider yourself an expert. And I know that's where Matthew lives. I know that's where Alexander lives. And I know that's where I live as a teacher of composition. You have to set aside your expertise sometimes. You just do. And one thing to remember, never, ever, ever, ever confuse endorsing not knowing as advocating for ignorance. It's just not the same thing at all. That's my thoughts. Any questions? We wanted to leave time for questions, but I guess we're kind of running short. So Allison, you can tell me whether we have time for questions or not. I'm happy to answer them if we have time.
Yeah, I think if anybody does have a question, or John, I know we probably are going to direct them towards your blog. Absolutely another place for them to gain some more insight. Thank you, Hannah, for dropping that in the chat. But yeah, if there are any remaining questions before we head off, that is perfectly wonderful. Aline.
I just want to say thank you for this wonderful exercise. And especially, it just seems so simple and so pertinent. Just be open without assumption and listen. We just need to listen. So thank you. I think it's got a big message.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I enjoy it. It's life-giving to me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you, John. I feel like I need to go out and buy a whole box of colored pencils so I can now start drawing as I'm listening to music. So thank you for that. The visual learner and musician in me is very happy right now. And I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. A final thanks to our event participants, Matthew Evan Taylor, Alexandra Dubois, John Morrison. We do ask that you mark your calendars and join us for our next Experience Longy event, Unlocking Our Students' Potential, a new philosophy on coaching. This is one of Longy's truly groundbreaking innovations in how it has reimagined conservatory education. I believe it represents a mindset that all conservatories will need to embrace to remain relevant, but I might be a little biased. So mark your calendars, February 15th, 7 p.m. via Zoom. Until then, I wish you all happy holidays and good night.